Mara Voss was reading a story about a rabbit who wanted to visit the stars. When the sky turned orange, she stopped. Mid-sentence. 26 children sat on the carpet in front of her, cross-legged, their eyes wide. And waiting, she looked past them, through the tall classroom windows, and saw fire falling from above. Not meteor ships, dark ones shaped like teeth dropping through the clouds, in long straight lines. The ground shook. A few of the younger children screamed. One boy, barely 5 years old, grabbed a leg of her chair. "Miss Voss," he whispered. She closed the book. Slowly, she smiled, even though her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. "That was the first thing they taught you. When you worked with children, you never showed fear, no matter what." "All right, everyone," she said, keeping her voice soft and warm. "We're going to play the hiding game. Remember the hiding game. Everyone stays together. Everyone stays quiet, and we go to the safe room. Can you do that for me?" They nodded. Some of them were crying, but they nodded. Haven's Reach was not a big colony. It sat on the edge of human space, a green and quiet world. Families came to build simple lives. There were farms, a few small towns too, schools, and an orphanage that looked after children who had lost parents to accidents or illness on the frontier. There was no real army here, just a militia of 100 volunteers with basic weapons and old training. Vraxian Dominion did not care about any of that. They cared about the mineral deposits deep under the hills, and they cared about taking prisoners who could work. Commander Reckon Joel stood on the bridge of his assault carrier and watched the colony burn on the screens below. He was tall, even for a Vraxian, with hard gray skin and 4 eyes that never blinked at the same time. He had been waiting a long time for a command like this. A clean target. No real resistance. A chance to prove himself to the generals above him. "Status," he said. "Militia forces are broken, Commander." His second officer reported. "Surface resistance will end within the hour. Collection teams are moving through the settlements now." "How many captives so far?" 1,100. "We expect the final count to reach 2,000. Joel nodded. 2,000 labor units from a single raid. The High Command would be pleased. He might even receive a promotion. He did not ask who was being collected. He did not ask their ages. He did not ask if they were scared or hurt or crying. They were numbers on a report. Units of value. Nothing more. On the ground, the collection was brutal and fast. Vraxian soldiers moved through the town in armored squads, kicking in doors, dragging people from their homes. They used stun weapons on anyone who resisted. They loaded the colonists into long metal transports like cargo. When they reached the school, the doors were locked. A Vraxian squad leader blew them open with a single charge. Inside, they found Marva Voss standing in the hallway, arms spread wide, blocking the path to the safe room. "There are only children in here," she said. Her voice did not shake, even though her whole body wanted to run. "They're young. They are not workers. Please, just leave them." The squad leader looked at her. He did not understand her words. His translator processed them a moment later, and he simply pushed her aside. She hit the wall hard and fell. Before she could get up, soldiers were already pulling children out of the safe room carrying them under their arms. Like packages. Mara scrambled to her feet and followed. She did not fight. She knew she could not win a fight. But she could stay with them. That was the only thing she could do. And she would do it until they killed her. They did not kill her. They loaded her onto the transport with the rest. Across town, the orphanage received the same treatment. 43 children, some as young as 3, were taken from their beds. They had no parents to scream for them. They had only the caretakers, too old. Women who were thrown aside like furniture. By the time the sun set on Havens reached, the colony was a smoking ruin. 2014 people had been loaded onto Vraxian transport ships. Among them were 317 children. The youngest was 3. The oldest was 14. Nobody on the Vraxian side made a note of this. In the official report that Commander Jules sent to the forward command station, the captives were listed as 2014 labor units, standard classification. There was no separate line for the children. There was no mention of the school. There was no mention of the orphanage. To the Vraxian military, they were all the same. Small ones and big ones. All just stock. In the dark hold of the transport ship, Mara gathered as many children around her as she could. The space was cold and metal and smelled like engine oil. Some children were from her class. Others she recognized from the school hallways. Some she had never seen before, probably from the orphanage. They were all terrified. She sat on the floor and pulled the smallest ones into her lap. She wrapped her arms around as many as she could reach. And then she did the only thing she knew how to do. She told them a story. Once upon a time, she said quietly, there was a rabbit who wanted to visit the stars. The children listened. Some of them stopped crying. Some of them pressed closer to her, tiny hands gripping her shirt, her arms, her fingers. In the darkness, surrounded by the hum of alien engines carrying them away from everything they knew, they held on to her voice like a lifeline. Mara did not know where they were going. She did not know what would happen to them, but she made a promise to herself, right there in that cold metal room, with 317 children breathing around her. She would keep them alive. She would keep them together. And she would wait. Because somewhere out there beyond the stars that the rabbit in her story wanted to visit, people would find out what had happened. And when they did, they would come. She was sure of it. Humans always came for their children. Meanwhile, on the bridge above, Shaw filed his final report and opened a bottle of Vraxian victory wine. He drank along, staring out at the stars, already thinking about his next raid, his next promotion, his next step upward. He had no idea what he had just started. He had no idea that in the cold hold, below his feet, wrapped around those 317 children, was a fuse, and it was already burning. The handful of survivors had escaped into the hills of Haven's Reach. Bleeding, burned, shaking with rage and grief, they dragged a damaged communication unit to the top of a ridge and pointed it at the sky. The signal they sent was broken and full of static. The 3 words came through clearly. They took children. The signal flew outward at the speed of light, bouncing from relay to relay, crossing the vast emptiness between stars. It would reach human space within hours. And when it arrived, everything would Change General Thurick Von had not lost a war in 219 years. He stood in the command hall of Citadel Korth, a massive station carved into the side of an asteroid deep in Raxian-controlled space. Around him, dozens of officers moved between holographic maps and data screens, managing an empire's worth of military operations, fleets, supply chains, troop movements, conquered territories. It all flowed through this room, and it all flowed through Von. He was old enough that the gray plates of his skin had darkened to almost black, old enough that 3 of his 4 eyes had dulled to pale yellow while the 4th still burned bright. He walked slowly now, but every officer in the room still straightened when he passed. He had earned that fear over centuries of careful, brutal, efficient warfare. Von did not enjoy cruelty. He did not enjoy kindness either. He enjoyed results. War to him was a math problem. You measured the enemy's strength, you calculated the cost, and you applied force where it was cheapest and most effective. That was all. Emotion was a mistake. Rage was a weakness. Victory was arithmetic. On this morning, he was reviewing the latest frontier reports. Small operations, border raids, resource seizures, routine work. He scanned each one and moved on. Show's report from Haven's Reach was one line among many. 2,000 labor units captured, mineral deposits secured, no significant losses. Von marked it as satisfactory and moved to the next file. Then his intelligence officer, a thin, nervous Frashian named Talek, approached his desk. General. Something unusual. Von looked up. He did not like the word unusual. Unusual meant something he had not predicted, and he did not like things he had not predicted. Explain. Talek placed a data tablet on the desk. It is the humans, sir. All of their diplomatic channels have gone silent. Every single one. Their ambassadors across the conquered have recalled themselves. Their trade ships have reversed course. Their communication relays are active, but carrying no traffic. Von stared at the tablet. When did this begin? Approximately 16 hours ago. It happened all at once, like someone turned off a switch. Von sat back in his chair. In his 2 centuries of war, he had seen species panic, surrender, bluff, and threaten, but he had never seen an entire species go quiet. Quiet was not a reaction, he understood. Quiet meant they were not wasting energy on words. Quiet meant all of their energy was going somewhere else. Which of our recent operations involved human territory? He asked. Talek checked. Only one, sir. Commander Joel's raid on the Havens Reach colony. Von pulled up Joel's report again and read it more carefully. He found nothing remarkable. A small colony, light resistance, standard capture operation. He frowned and set it aside. Then he did something he rarely did. He called for Counselor Iden. Iden was not Raxian. He was Felshia, a member of a small, quiet species the Dominion had conquered 80 years ago. He was old and thin, with soft blue skin, and large dark eyes that always seemed sad. The Raxians kept him because he was useful. He had spent 40 years studying other species, especially the ones the Dominion might one day fight. He knew things that soldiers did not know. He understood how other minds worked. Von did not respect Iden. but he trusted his knowledge. Iden entered the command hall slowly, his hands folded in front of him. He bowed his head to the general and waited. "The humans have gone silent," Vaughn said. "All channels. All at once. I want to know why." Iden blinked his large eyes. "May I see the reports from your most recent contact with human space?" Vaughn handed him the tablet with Joel's report. Iden read it slowly. Then he read it again. Then he asked to see the full captive manifest. Vaughn ordered Tolik to pull it up. Iden scrolled through the list. His eyes moved faster now. His thin blue fingers began to tremble. Against the screen, Vaughn noticed. In 200 years, he had learned to read fear in every species he had encountered. And Iden was afraid. Not nervous. Not concerned, afraid. The kind of afraid that went down to the bone. "Speak," Vaughn ordered. Iden looked up from the tablet. His voice was very quiet. "The captives from the school complex and the child care facility. How old were they?" Vaughn checked the manifest. The ages are not specifically listed, but the facility types suggest young, between 4 and 14 standard years. Iden closed his eyes. He held them closed for a long time. When he opened them, they were wet. "How many?" he asked. 317. Iden set the tablet down on the desk, very gently, as if it were something that might explode. "General," he said, "you need to understand what a child is to a human." Vaughn crossed his arms. "Every species protects its young. It is basic biology." "No," Iden said. "You are not listening. Other species protect their young because instinct tells them to, because survival demands it, because it is natural. Humans do something different. Humans have taken the protection of their children and made it into something sacred. It is the foundation of their entire civilization. It crosses every border they have, every political line, every cultural divide, every war they have ever fought with. Each other stops the moment their children are in danger from the outside." Vaughn frowned. "They are a fractured species. They argue with each other constantly. Their politics are chaos." "Yes," Iden said. "Until you touch their children. Then the chaos stops. All of it instantly. You have to understand, General. I have studied humans for 40 years. I have watched them disagree about everything, but on this one thing they are perfectly, terrifyingly united. A human will die for a child that is not even theirs. A human will kill for a child they have never met. It is not instinct. It is something they chose, something they built into themselves so deeply that it might as well be instinct. And when it is triggered, there is no negotiation. There is no diplomacy. There is no price you can offer and no threat you can make." The command hall had gone quiet. Officers nearby had stopped working. They were listening. Vaughn leaned forward in his chair. His bright fourth eye was fixed on Iden. "What will they do?" he asked. Iden's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "They will come for you. With everything they have. Every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon they own, including the ones they have hidden away and promised the galaxy they would never use again. They will not stop until every one of those children is returned. And they will dismantle anything that stands between them and that goal. Not out of strategy, not out of politics, out of something much older and much more dangerous. What? Fury General. The kind that does not burn out. The kind that is patient and focused and does not care about cost. Vaughn sat very still. The hum of the command hall filled the silence. He could hear his own breathing, slow and heavy. And then, for the first time in 219 years of war, General Thuron Vaughn faltered. His voice came out rough and low, almost as if he did not want to hear his own words. Did they take human children? Aiden nodded slowly. 317 of them, General. Some as young as 3 years old. Vaughn said nothing for a long time. He stared at the holographic map of his empire, all those conquered systems, all those fleets, all that power. And for the first time it looked small to him. He stood up. Every officer in the room turned to face him. "Get me Commander Joel," he said. Now he paused, then added quieter, almost to himself, "and begin fortifying every position between here and human space." Aiden watched the general walk away. He folded his trembling hands and closed his eyes. He had tried to warn them years ago. He had written reports. He had given lectures. He had told anyone who would listen that humans were not what they appeared to be, that their kindness was not weakness, that their love for their children was not sentimentality, that it was a weapon, the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy, because it could not be destroyed, could not be reasoned with, and could not be stopped. Nobody had listened. Now they would learn. The signal from Haven's Reach arrived at the nearest human relay station at 3:17 Earth Standard Time. It was broken, full of static, barely holding together. But the 3 words at its core were clear enough. They took children. The relay operator, a young woman on quiet night shift, listened to it twice. Then she sent it up the chain. Within minutes, it reached military intelligence. Within an hour, it had been confirmed, cross-referenced, and verified against the silence of Haven's Reach's communication network. By dawn, it was on the desk of every flag officer in the United Human Command. The UHC was not a government. It was not an army in the traditional sense. It was something older and stranger, a system built into the bones of human civilization during a darker age when humanity had first gone to the stars and learned that the universe was not always kind. It was a wartime structure designed to unite every human faction, every nation, every colony, every fleet under a single command authority in the event of an existential threat. It had not been activated in 60 years. Most people thought it never would be. Again, at 9:00 Earth Standard Time, a single coded phrase was broadcast on every human communication channel across known space. Military frequencies, civilian bands, emergency networks, personal devices. Every human everywhere heard it at the same moment. They took our children. 4 words. That was all it took. The response was not gradual. It was not debated. It was instant, total, and absolute. On Earth, retired soldiers walked into recruitment centers before the doors were officially open. They did not wait in lines. The staff simply waved them through. On Mars, 3 of the largest shipbuilding corporations issued a joint statement within the hour. It said simply, all production is now under UC authority. Tell us what you need. On the colony worlds, governors who had spent years arguing with each other over taxes and trade would held emergency joint sessions and unanimously voted to release their planetary defense forces to the Central Command. In the criminal underworld, something even stranger happened. The largest human smuggling networks, organizations that had spent decades evading military intelligence, voluntarily contacted the UHC and offered their information. Spy networks, hidden routes through neutral space, locations of Raxian supply lines. They asked for nothing in return. On a station orbiting Jupiter, a man named Jonah Keen sat in a quiet office and read the reports coming in from every corner of human space. He was the Vice Admiral of the UHC's Reserve Fleet, a position that had been mostly ceremonial for decades. He was a calm man, thin, gray-haired. He spoke softly and he smiled often. People who did not know him sometimes mistook him for a professor or a librarian. He was neither. He had commanded warships for 30 years. Before taking the reserve posting, he had fought in skirmishes, border conflicts, and one very ugly engagement near the outer rim that he never spoke about. He was the kind of man who became very still when things got bad. Right now, he was very still. His aide entered the office. "Sir, the Feldari have sent a diplomatic envoy. They are requesting an audience. They want to discuss a negotiated settlement with the Vraxian Dominion." King looked up. "Show them in." The Feldari envoy was tall and graceful, with silver skin and a voice like flowing water. The Feldari were one of the oldest species in the galactic Concord, known for their patience and their belief that all conflicts could be solved through dialogue. "Vice Admiral," the envoy said, bowing slightly, "the Feldari Consortium is deeply concerned by the events at Haven's Reach. We believe that a diplomatic approach is the most responsible course of action. The Vraxian Dominion has shown willingness to negotiate in the past. If we open formal channels, we are confident that the captives can be returned through peaceful means." King listened politely. He let the envoy finish without interrupting. Then he folded his hands on the desk. "I appreciate the consortium's concern," he said. "I want you to understand that we mean no disrespect to the Feldari or to any member of the Conquered." He paused. "But there is nothing to negotiate. We are going to get our children back. Anyone in our way will be moved." The envoy blinked. "Moved, Vice Admiral?" King did not answer. He simply looked at the envoy with steady, quiet eyes. The envoy, who had negotiated with dozens of species over centuries, felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt the urge to step backward. He did not press the question. He bowed, thanked the Vice Admiral for his time, and left. That evening, the envoy sent a private message back to the Folder Consortium. It read, "Do not attempt further mediation. The humans are not angry. They are resolved. There is a difference. I recommend we clear their path and stay out of it." Over the next 72 hours, the largest military mobilization in human history took shape. Ships that had been mothballed in orbital graveyards for decades were pulled out, refitted, and crewed. Weapons platforms that had been sealed under conquered peace treaties were unsealed. The treaty offices were notified. The notifications were not requests for permission. They were simply statements of fact. The conquered watched. Every species in the alliance watched. And they began to realize something that made them deeply uncomfortable. Humans had been holding back. For a century, humanity had been a peaceful, cooperative member of the galactic community. They traded. They shared technology. They sent doctors to plague zones and engineers to disaster sites. They were seen as kind, emotional, sentimental, perhaps a little soft. The galaxy had looked at humans and seen a gentle species that had outgrown its violent past. Now, as fleet after fleet assembled in formation, as weapon systems came online that the conquered had never seen before, as human shipyards produced warships at a rate that should have been physically impossible, the galaxy began to understand that humans had not outgrown anything. They had simply chosen to put it away. They had locked the wolf in a cage, not because the wolf was dead, but because they hoped they would never need it again. Someone had opened the cage on a Vraxian labor processing station. Far from all of this, Mara Voss sat on a cold metal floor with children sleeping around her. They had arrived 2 days ago. The Vraxians had separated the adults from the children, but Mara had refused to leave. She had stood in the doorway of the children's holding area and simply would not move. The guards had hit her twice. She had gotten back up both times. Eventually, they decided she was not worth the effort and left her with the children. She had organized the older ones. The 12 and 13-year-olds became helpers. They watched over the younger children, made sure everyone had water from the dispensers, and kept the smallest ones from wandering near the guards. Mara gave each of them a job, a purpose, something to focus on that was not fear. At night, when the lights in the holding area dimmed, the children gathered close to her. They could not all fit around her, so they pressed against each other in a large group, body heat against body heat. And Mara talked. She told stories. She played word games. She asked them to describe their favorite places, their favorite foods, their pets, their dreams. And when they asked her if anyone was coming for them, she said the same thing every time. They are coming. I promise you. They are coming. She did not know the details. She had no access to news, no communication with the outside. But she knew humans. She knew what the people back home would do when they found out what had happened. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. 317 children were waiting in the dark, and the wolf was already on its way. General Vaughn had given Commander Joel direct order: return the children immediately, no conditions. Joel refused. He stood on the bridge of his carrier, puffed up with the confidence of a man who had never been punished for anything in his life, and told the general that the captives were his to manage. He had already distributed them across 3 separate labor facilities. Moving them now would be a waste of resources. Besides, he argued, the children could be useful as leverage if the humans tried anything. Vaughn listened to this over a secure channel and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Not anger. Something colder. Joel was a fool, and fools in positions of power during a crisis were more dangerous than any enemy. You do not understand what you have Done, Vaughn said. I understand perfectly, General. I captured a colony with minimal losses. If the humans want their stock back, they can negotiate. Vaughn ended the communication. He stood alone in his private quarters, for several minutes staring at the wall. Then he made a decision. He could not undo what Joel had done. He could only prepare for what was coming. Over the next 5 days, he pulled 40 fleets into a defensive formation between human space and Citadel Korath. It was the largest concentration of Raxian military power in a generation. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, orbital weapons platforms, minefield sensor networks. He built a wall of fire and metal across an entire sector of space. He told himself it would be enough. On the 6th day, the human fleet arrived. It did not come from one direction. It came from everywhere. Jump points lit up across the sector, like sparks from a fire. One fleet to 520, they kept coming. More ships than Vraxian intelligence had ever estimated humanity possessed. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers with flight decks that stretch for kilometers. Fast attack frigates moving in formation, so tight and precise they looked like single organisms. They did not hail. They did not announce themselves. They did not make demands or threats or speeches. They broadcast one message on every frequency in every known language. It played once and then it played again. On loop. Return our children. You have one solar cycle. Vaughn stood in the command hall of Citadel Korath and watched the tactical display. His officers were silent. The holographic map showed the human fleet as a field of blue dots. The Vraxian defensive line was a field of red dots. The blue field was larger. How many ships? Vaughn asked. Tolik checked and rechecked the numbers. Over 9,000 capital-class vessels. General, plus support ships and smaller craft. Total count is still rising. Vaughn said nothing. 9,000 capital ships. The Vraxians had estimated humanity's total active fleet at under 3,000. They had been wrong by a factor of 3. And ships were still arriving. The solar cycle passed. Jal did not return the children. He sent a message to the human fleet, instead offering to discuss terms. He apparently believed he was in a position to bargain. The humans did not respond to the message. Instead, at the exact moment the solar cycle ended, the blue dots on the tactical display began to move. All of them. At once. What happened next would be studied by military academies of every species in the galaxy for centuries. Not because it was the largest battle ever fought, but because of how the humans fought it. They did not engage the Vraxian defensive line head-on. They did not try to overwhelm it with numbers. Instead, they hit the command ships. First, precise, coordinated strikes from multiple angles, targeting communication, relays, flag bridges, and sensor arrays. In the first 4 minutes, 60% of the Vraxian fleet lost contact with Central Command. Then they moved through the gaps. The Vraxian line was strong, but it was designed to stop an enemy that wanted to conquer territory. The humans did not want territory. They did not want to destroy the Vraxian fleet. They did not want to occupy stations or seize resources. They wanted one thing, and everything they did was aimed at that one thing. They wanted the children. Their fleet split into 3 spearheads, each aimed at one of the three facilities where the captives were being held. The rest of the fleet formed a moving shield around these spearheads, absorbing fire, drawing Vraxian attention, creating chaos. But the spearheads never slowed. They cut through the defensive line like needles through cloth. Vaughn watched it happen and understood. He was not fighting an army. He was fighting a rescue operation. The largest, most violent, most determined rescue operation in the history of the galaxy. Vraxian ships tried to block them. The humans went through them. Not around. Through. Their weapons were things they conquered, had never seen, technologies that had apparently existed in human vaults for decades, waiting for a reason to be used. Vraxian warships that had fought a dozen campaigns were disabled in seconds. Not destroyed. Disabled. The humans were not trying to kill. They were trying to clear a path. And they were fast. Faster than any fleet Vaughn had ever seen. Their coordination was not just good. It was inhuman. Every ship seemed to know exactly where every other ship was. There were no wasted movements, no confusion, no hesitation. It was as if the entire fleet was one mind with 9,000 bodies. On the Vraxian front lines, soldiers began to surrender. Not because they were defeated. Many of their ships were still functional, their weapons still loaded, their armor still intact. They surrendered because of what they saw in the humans' approach. There was no rage in it. No screaming, no taunting, no bloodlust. There was something worse. There was certainty. Absolute, unshakable, focused certainty. The humans were not fighting because they were angry. They were fighting because they had decided what was going to happen, and they were simply making it happen. One Vraxian captain, in a report filed after the war, described it this way: I have faced enemies who wanted to kill me. I have faced enemies who wanted to conquer me. But I have never faced an enemy who looked through me as if I did not matter. We were not their target. We were not even their enemy. We were just in the way. Vaughn, watching the battle collapse around him, did something he had never done before. He opened a direct channel to the human fleet. Vice Admiral Keen's face appeared on the screen. He looked exactly as the intelligence files described him, thin, gray-haired, calm. He could have been sitting in a library. General Vaughn, Keen said. His voice was polite, quiet. Vice Admiral, I'm authorizing the immediate release of all human captives, including the children. I will order my forces to stand down and provide the locations of all three holding facilities. I ask only that you cease your advance. There was a pause. Keen looked at Vaughn the way a man looks at a clock. General, Keen said, your commander Jal was given one soar cycle to return. Our children. That cycle has passed. I understand. I am overriding Jal's authority. The captives are yours. We are no longer asking General. The channel closed. Vaughn stood in the command hall and listened to the sounds of his empire's greatest military force being taken apart. Not destroyed. Taken apart. Piece by piece, system by system, with surgical precision by a species the galaxy had called soft. He thought about what Counselor Iden had told him, about fury that does not burn out, about a line that once crossed erases every other thought in a human's mind. He thought about 317 children in a dark room, and he understood with the cold clarity that had made him a great general that this war was already over. It had been over from the moment Shah's soldiers walked into that school. He turned to his officers. "Order all of Raxian forces to stand down," he said. "Immediately. All sectors. No exceptions." One of his officers started to protest. Vaughn silenced him with a look. And GT, snorts. And GT, we have already lost, Vaughn said. Quietly, we lost 6 days ago. We simply did not know it yet. The order went out. Across the sector, Raxian ships powered down their weapons and drifted to a halt. The human fleet did not slow. It kept moving straight and fast toward the 3 facilities. They were coming for their children, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. The facility on the moon of Korath 4 was a gray, ugly building on a gray, ugly world. No atmosphere, no sunlight, just rock and metal and the hum of machines keeping the air breathable. Inside, it had been built to process labor units. Nobody had ever designed it to be comfortable. Marva had been inside it for 8 days. She had lost weight. Her left eye was bruised from where a guard had struck her for moving too slowly. Her hands were raw from the cold. But she was standing. She was always standing. Every morning when the lights flickered on in the holding area, she stood up, smiled at the children, and began the day. She had built a routine. Mornings were for stories and games. Midday was for rest. Afternoons were for lessons because she was still a teacher and these were still her students, and she would not let this place take that away from them. She taught them math with scratches on the floor. She taught them history with stories from memory. She taught them songs, and sometimes in the evenings 300 voices would sing together in that cold metal room, and even the guards outside would go quiet. For a moment, the older children had become her team. 14-year-old Kai had taken charge of water distribution. 12-year-old Priya watched the youngest ones during rest time. 13-year-old Davi kept count every morning. Every single morning he walked through the room and counted every child. And every morning the number was the same, 317. Nobody had been lost. Nobody had been taken away. Nobody had been left behind. On the 8th night, Mara was sitting with her back against the wall, half asleep when she felt it. A vibration in the floor, deep and low like a heartbeat. Then another. Then a sound she had never heard before. A sharp cracking noise that echoed through the walls. The children woke up. Some of them started to cry. "It is all right," Mara said, standing. "Everyone stay together. Stay in the middle of the room." The vibrations got stronger. There were more cracking sounds, closer. Now, then a muffled boom that shook dust from the ceiling. Then silence. A long silence. Then a voice. Clear, human, calm, speaking in standard. Through what sounded like a helmet. "Speaker. Facilities secure. Moving to the holding area, all teams. Weapons down near the children. I repeat, weapons down near the children." Mara's breath caught in her throat. The door to the holding area did not open. It was cut open. A bright line of white light traced rectangle in the metal, and the entire slab fell inward with a crash that made Every child jump. Behind it stood a line of figures in dark armor, human armor. They moved fast but carefully, sweeping into the room with their weapons pointed at the floor. The lead operator pulled off his helmet. He was young, maybe 30. He had brown skin and tired eyes and a scar across his jaw. He looked at the room full of children, and his face did something complicated. His jaw tightened. His eyes went wet. He blinked it away and spoke. "My name is Sergeant Ronham Cole, United Human Command. We are here to take you home." For a moment, nobody moved. The children stared at the soldiers. The soldiers stared at the children. The room was completely silent. Then one small girl, maybe 4 years old, walked forward. She had been one of the quietest children in the group, barely speaking for days. She walked up to Sergeant Cole and looked up at him. "Miss Voss said you would come," she said. Cole knelt down in front of her. He was a Special Forces operator who had breached a fortified alien facility on an airless moon, and his hands were shaking. "Miss Voss was right," he said. The room broke open. Children ran to the soldiers. Soldiers knelt down and picked them up. Some of the operators were crying behind their helmets. Nobody cared. Nobody pretended to be tough. These were children, human children, and they were alive. Mara Vio stood against the wall and watched it happen. Her legs were trembling. Her vision was blurred with tears. A medic approached her and put a hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Count them," she said. "Please count them." The medic looked confused. "Ma'am, the children. Count them. I need to know they are all here." They counted. It took several minutes because the children were moving around, hugging. Soldiers talking, crying, laughing. But the count came back. 317. All of them. Every single one. Mara sat down on the floor and put her face in her hands and wept. The extraction was fast and professional. Transports landed on the surface and the children were loaded carefully with blankets and water and food, and medics checking each one. Mara insisted on riding with them. Nobody argued with her. By now, every soldier in the operation knew who she was and what she had done. The woman who had stayed with the children. The woman who had stood in doorways and taken blows and built a school inside a prison. Commander Stoll was captured at a separate facility 60 light minutes away. He was found hiding a supply closet. He did not resist. He was brought before a human military tribunal 4 months later. The trial was public. The evidence was clear. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a penal station. He was not executed. Many people wanted him to be. Many people argued for it. But the tribunal followed the law, because that was what humans did. Even when they were furious. Even when it would have been easy and satisfying to let fury make the decision. They chose justice. Not because J-Owl deserved mercy, but because they refused to become the kind of species that abandon its principles. When things got hard, General Viorn surrendered the entire forward campaign. Not just the sector, the whole campaign. 17 conquered systems, 40 war fleets, hundreds of facilities. He handed it all over in a formal ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. Then he addressed the Vraxian High Command. He stood alone on a stage in the great hall of Citadel Kareth, in front of a council of the most powerful military leaders in the Dominion. He was old and tired, and for the first time in his long life he looked it. "I have fought the Draenari and broken them," he said. "I have fought them. I have waged war against 17 species across 2 centuries, and I have never once faltered." He paused. The hall was silent. "I faltered against the humans, and I am here to tell you why. Not because their ships were better, although they were. Not because their fleet was larger, although it was. Not because their weapons were superior, although they had weapons we did not know existed." He took a breath. "I faltered because I watched an entire species become a single weapon in less than 30 days. Every faction, every colony, every ship, every human, from the oldest soldier to the youngest engineer, moved as one. They did not argue. They did not debate. They did not hesitate. They heard that their children had been taken, and they became something I have never seen in 200 years of war." He looked at the council. "We took their children. We are fortunate, deeply and profoundly fortunate, that they only wanted them back, because I looked into the eyes of their vice admiral, and I saw a man who was capable of burning this entire dominion to the ground and sleeping peacefully afterward, not because he was cruel, but because he had decided that our existence was less important than the safety of 317 small lives." He stepped back from the podium. "Do not fight the humans," he said. "Not because you cannot win, but because you do not understand the cost. None of us did. Now I do." He left the stage. He never commanded a fleet again. The Galactic Concord held an emergency session 3 weeks later. The topic was the revision of diplomatic guidelines regarding humanity. The session lasted 4 hours. Most of it was spent in silence as delegates reviewed the footage from the war, the mobilization, and the rescue. At the end, a single addition was made to the Concord's official handbook on interspecies relations. Under the section on humanity, a new line was added. It was short. It was simple. And every species in the galaxy memorized it. "Do not touch the children." 6 months later, Haven's Reach was rebuilt. New homes, new farms, new schools. A permanent human garrison orbited the planet now, a ring of warships that never left. Maravos returned to her classroom. It was a new building with bigger windows and a better carpet and a shelf full of new books. Her students were there. Not all of them. Some families had moved away, unable to live with the memories. But most of them came back. They sat on the carpet cross-legged, looking up at her with eyes that were older than they should have been, but still full of trust. She picked up a double book from the shelf. She opened it to the first page. She smiled. "Once upon a time," she said, "there was a rabbit who wanted to visit the stars. Outside, high above the clouds, a human warship passed silently through orbit. Its weapons were armed. Its sensors were active. Its crew was watching. Mara did not look up. She did not need to. She knew they were there. They would always be there.